Hey everyone, and welcome to the 6th video in the series. In this video, we'll cover how to build a compound component in React. So a compound component is where we take several components we've already created in the past and put them into one. So similar to chemistry, where you have compound elements, we take several elements and we put them into one. In this case, it is components. So we can take a component like the button component, and we can take the icon components, and we're going to make a card component from it. So if we take this simple card component as an example, we want a box, we want a card component here with title, some text, a button, and we're going to have a dismiss icon here. So if, for example, if we're not interested in this card, we can just dismiss it by clicking an icon here. We're also going to have an image, so we're going to have a lot of cool things here, but this gives you a sense of what we're talking about when we say a card. So if we go to Storybook, this is one of the components we'll be using. We'll be using the button component, and we'll also be using the icon component here, so we'll get some icons in here. So let's start building. So if we close this down, and we're going to create a card component. So we'll create a new folder within components, and we'll call it card. And we will create a index file, and then we'll create a card.sass file. We'll also create a stories folder because we'll need our stories in there. All right, card.stories.tsx. Cool. So we start to get this set up now. Let's create our card component. Make sure it's a function component. And we shall return. For now, we'll do a div. We'll say class name is equal, and we're definitely going to have multiple class names, so we might as well add our backward ticks here. So let's add css.card as the name. We'll add CSS modules, and we'll require card.sass. Cool, so that should all be hooked up, and then we'll just put a h1 of card here, and then some lorem ipsum in here. Yeah, I think that's we'll just add a normal button for now. We won't add our component just yet. Export default card. So now we're exporting the card component, so that the basics of that should be done. Let's go to index. Just make sure that this is being read first. Now that's hooked up to the card component. We'll go to the stories here, and we'll just make sure this is all set up. So we'll go to button stories here, just grab that, go here, paste that in, and we just want the card component. So we'll say it's got no prop, so it should just bring it in fine. Get rid of that. Don't have any styling. It is the card component. Yep, and that should be done. So if we go to Storybook now, we can see our card component. So we can see all the changes that we make now. Now in UI development, the first thing that you always do when you're setting up a new component or you're working on a new bit of UI is you make sure that the HTML and CSS is solid before you start working on the logic. So that's exactly what we're going to do here. We're going to take this, the basics of this, and then turn it into the kind of style that we want. So we'll go ahead and do that now. So we'll go back to card, just make sure everything is as we want it. So we want to kind of divide our sections up so we have a bit more control on the flow of the content. So we don't have certain elements influencing others unnecessarily. So we want a header, a content section, and almost a footer section. So if we do that now, we'll go here and create another div. And we'll give it a class name. We'll go css.top_actions, and then below here we'll go div.bottom_actions. Make sure that's CSS modules. Open that up. We'll put the button in there. Delete that and open this up. Now in here we're going to need to add the dismiss icon. So we'll add the icon component, and we'll just close that now. Now, the good thing about Visual Studio Code is even if you just add a component, if you hover over it, you should be able to be told what the issue is. So first we need to import it, but we want to see the missing props. So it's telling us here icon name is missing in this type, but it's required. So we need to add the icon name at least. So we'll add icon name, and we'll add cross. So we'll just double check that we've got that. So we'll go to icon.sass and we'll go check to see if we've actually got it. So we actually do have a cross icon here, so we should be okay. So let's go see how that looks. We'll bring that in now. We go to the card components. Yep, beautiful. Now we do have an issue with the color, so we will change the icon color to something that matches the rest of it for now. We'll probably change it to a body color, so let's go and sort that out now. We'll close that down and we'll go icon color and we'll say that is equal to body. Just make sure that yes, that should be correct. Let's just double check. Primary, secondary, body. Okay. So in fact, it's not icon color, it is just color. So that's the benefit of having an IDE to be able to have a look at this type of stuff. So I can just go in and have a little quick peek at the properties here and then just go back to what I was doing. Let's go take a look. Yep, so the color has changed now. Cool. Let's go add the button component properly now. So we go to the button component, or the button element, and we're going to turn that into the button component here. So let's make sure we add that. Now you can see here that it's saying it's missing something. So it's missing children. So we'll get this here and we'll put children and we'll just say button goes here, and it's also asking for something else. I believe it was 3 requirements that it had. So it wanted the color, the text, and the label. So let's make sure we add these 3. So I'm not sure why it was telling me that I needed children. Oh, I must be seeing things. Yeah, that wasn't an actual property. I must have misread that. No worries. So let's go and change that to text. So that will be the text now. What else is it? Color and label. So let's add the label. And we'll just say button for now. We'll put card button for now. It was the color. So the color for this, I think we'll go for, what color can we do? Primary or secondary? We'll go for primary. Right, so that's all the basic setup. And the reason that works, even though it's got a huge list of properties, is because we only had these 3 that are required. The rest are absolutely optional. But we will be using these when it comes to adding some of the logic. In terms of the styling, I don't think we want an icon for now, to be honest. So we don't need to worry about icon colors. We will need loading because when they click this button, it will show a loading state. So yeah, we'll set all that up soon. Make sure that this should be everything. Right, so I think we need to just add a few more class names here and then we should be okay. So I'll add the class name title. Add the class name. Whoop. Now you don't need to add the class names for this because you could just use element selectors for this. For example, within a card, or we could even just put this in its own div. In fact, that's what we will do. Take that out. Make a div called content, and we'll just pop that in there. Brilliant. So now we have top actions, bottom actions, and content. And this needs to be CSS modules as well. And this will be, yeah, we'll just leave that as text. Okay, so we have card, top actions. Excellent. Right, let's just have a quick look how that looks. We might want that to be a different color, but we'll see. So we need to create, so similar to how we've got the card shape here, we'll need to build something similar here. So let's start putting this together. So we'll go to card.sass, we'll target the card itself, and we'll say it has a border of 2 pixels, for example, and we'll say it is primary. It is color primary, and we'll have a border radius of 5 pixels. Now you can normally do, I normally do about 3 to 5 pixels, which should be enough for something like this, but we want to have a nice rounded border. We want some padding, we'll have some base spacing. So that's about 20 pixels, I believe. Yeah, and then we want to add a max width of probably 350 pixels, and we'll say the width is 100%, so we want it to see the max of that 350 pixels. Actually, we'll go with 300 for now. I think we want to do something with the top actions. We just want to make sure that that's position absolute and that this is position relative, because that's going to be floating around. So if we go here and go position absolute, top 0, right, half spacing, and maybe we will do half spacing here too. So that's about 10 pixels, 10 pixels. So we're kind of putting it in the corner, the top right corner. So let's go take a look. So as you can see, it's starting to take shape. We're starting to get the card component look and feel. It's still not quite there. I think we're missing maybe a drop shadow or something. Sorry, not a drop shadow, a box shadow. So we'll go under here and we'll go box shadow, 2 pixels, 2 pixels, 2 pixels. And we'll just say color primary for now, just to see what it looks like. Okay, so we kind of want that to be a bit less crazy. So we'll try 4 pixels. Oh, that's probably worse. Yeah, maybe we actually get rid of that. We'll just try gray or something. Or color body. Yeah, maybe that. Yeah, that's a bit better. Yeah, I think that's a bit more tolerable. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm in love with this this border color. Yeah, but we'll stick with it for now. Okay. So the the next thing we want to do is we want to sort out the spacing, because the spacing between these 3 elements is really uneven. A tool that I actually like to use for measuring these types of things is something called Grid Ruler. And if you're using something like Brave and Chrome, it's a really cool tool to have. Let me just go grab it now. Yeah, it's a pretty popular one. I use Brave, so I'm just going to add it to Brave. But if you're using Chrome or Brave, it's basically the same browser for tools and dev tools and things like that. Cool. Right, so that's added. Let's go find that, add that here. And if we click Grid Ruler, all we need to do is, depending on where you want to go, I want to drag downwards. So if I go here, we can start to balance things. Actually, let's refresh that. So we'll add Grid Ruler, and then we'll kind of see the balance and see where everything is. So we can see that these are the type of gaps that we have. You can see there's starting to be a few imbalances. This is kind of the end of the content. So yeah, we've got a few issues here. It's not quite all lined up, and we've got the button ending here, which isn't a big issue, but what we want to do is we want to make sure that this has the same spacing as this, and maybe actually reduce that a little bit. So let's go ahead and do that. So if we go to card, we've got the content here, so let's go grab that, and we just want to add some margin. So we'll give probably about half spacing, and then we'll say 0 on either side. So we just want spacing on the top and the bottom. So if we go and have a look, we can see that's a bit better, but we can also see that there's quite a lot of margin on the top of this text. So let's go target this next. So we'll go to text, and we'll just say that the margin is removed, because so the container for the text is actually taking care of the margin. We don't actually need to have the text doing anything with the margin, so we're happy to get rid of it. And then if we refresh that, yeah, we can see that's a lot more balanced now. So if we get the grid ruler out and we go take a look, that looks about the same to me now. So it is probably about a 10 pixel difference between the two. Okay, now we need to worry about the spacing here with the end of the content. Do we want the content to go all the way up to the cross, or into this space here? And I would argue we don't want it to do that. We kind of just want it to sit in this little space, this little box we've created. Let's add that because that's the end of content here. Kind of want it to sit in this space, and the reason it's not going here is because that word just literally won't fit in there, and we've not made it wrap. So that's working fine. I think that's all spaced correctly, and we do want this to have its own space essentially. I feel like there's a lot of space here unnecessarily. So we might need to deal with that. Let's go have a look and see why that's there. Right, so we've got the H1 that's created a lot of margin. So let's go take care of that margin now. I suspect we're not going to need that margin at all. So we'll go here, get title. And in fact, I would just say at this stage, since we're not really individually styling them, I don't really want to be repeating myself. So I'm just going to do this. Because there's no point just creating two selectors that are doing the same thing. I might as well just create one multiple selector. Right, and then if we refresh that, go take a look. Okay, right, so there is, it's not all filling out the space fully. So there is that margin there. Maybe we actually want to get rid of the margin because the content actually contains a title, which I didn't think about. So what we might want to say is that we only want margin on the bottom. So this will be the top, this will be the right, and then we'll have half spacing for the bottom, and then no margin for the left. So top, right, bottom, left. Refresh that just to make sure. Yeah, that's a lot better now. Yeah, do we want that cross in line with this card? You're starting to see some of the considerations now that you have to think about as a UI developer. What I didn't want to do is kind of have all this figured out for you, because I think it's important for you to kind of see the mindset of what a UI developer has to go through and some of the considerations they have to make for UI that actually makes it to the client or makes it to production. I think for now that's fine being in the top right corner, because that's where you'd expect the dismiss icon to be, and there's a healthy amount of spacing around it, so that's fine. Okay. I would argue that actually we're going to change the content spacing to be base spacing to 20 pixels. I think 10 pixels is not enough. So we're just going to sort that out now. Just change that to base, and we'll go take a look. So that's sorted. And now the text at the top. So if we go to text here and we just say we only want margin top, and we'll say base spacing. Let's just make sure that's okay. So that's 20 pixels on the bottom, and that's 20 pixels on top. Okay. Right, so I think we've got the spacing covered. We just need to sort out the styling on the button. I'm thinking, first of all, let's go to card. Just change the text here to find out more, and we'll change the color to white. So I think one thing we've forgot to do is probably add some styling for the text color. But because we've got the ability to add a custom class name, we're actually okay. All we do is we go here, very bottom, and we'll just add a class name, and we'll say, and we'll just call it card button. And we'll go here, keep our structure very flat. When you're working with components, you try and want to aim to have a flat structure as much as possible, and try not to nest as much as possible like this. I mean, you've got all these class names, you might as well just add them separately rather than just nesting, which is a problem and a thing that you can fall into with Sass quite easily, because it's, you know, you got the ability to nest quite easily, you just go crazy. But with React components and CSS modules especially, everything's so scoped, you don't need to do that. So we just want to change the text color here to white. So if we do that, let's go take a look. So it's actually coming up as undefined, this custom class name, which is pretty annoying. Let's go back here. So this is the problem. What we're saying is we're adding a class name here, but we're turning it into a CSS module within the button component, which isn't correct. We don't really want to do that. What we want to do, if we go to the button component here, we don't want it to be a CSS module, because that's saying it's going to be a CSS module in the button component, which is, yeah, we don't want that. So what we'll just have to do is we'll just have to add class name here. Now, it being class name, it's literally going to take whatever you put in here into there. So if you go back here now that we have that, if we go here, refresh that, go and inspect it, it's got the text showing up. So the problem is we're only importing classes from card.sass as CSS modules. So I guess the way to counter that is if we go to the button component and then we change the class name to any just for now, which I don't recommend using the any class, but for argument's sake we're just going to use it now. So class name now can be a CSS module. We go back to card. In fact, we'll just change that to button, and then we change that to button. Refresh that. That should now work with CSS modules. Yeah, so there are sometimes a little bit of plumbing issues that you have to work around with to try and get custom class names with CSS modules working. But for the most part, that's kind of that's a really simplified workflow, because as a type, you wouldn't try and get away with just using any class. You try and be a bit more specific. But we'll just use this for now. In your own build, you probably should be a bit more specific. In your own build, you should be more specific with what you're using here. Okay, so we've got that turning up correctly. We've got the styling pretty much sorted. We want to add the functionality. So the button component is acting like a button, but it's not doing anything right now. It's also, when you click it, it doesn't do anything. So we want to change that. This dismiss icon here, when you click it, and when you hover over it, it doesn't do anything. So those are a few things we need to sort out straight away. So let's jump into here. Let's just close the stories down. Go to index.tsx, close that. Right, let's just open up icon and just take a look. So in the icon class, we can set the size, which we don't need to worry about. The color, which we've already sorted. The class name, we're not really going to have to sort out. The class name, we might need to touch to sort one thing out. If I go to icon here, add a class name, and if I go css.dismiss, and then if I go to icon again, I'm just going to see, yeah, we've got the same problem here that we had in the other one, except this is actually connected correctly. Now I suspect if we still use string, it might work. Let's go double check that. If we have dismiss here set up as a CSS module, go to card, and we'll go just here because obviously this is in the same kind of section, and we'll say on hover we want the cursor to be pointer. Oh, we've added it as an array. All right, let's go see what that does. Yeah, so that actually works. So we managed to add that as a CSS module with a string. So if we go back to the card component really quickly and just change that back to a string, that should work as well. Refresh that. Yeah, that's still working. So yeah, I guess a string works because you're passing the string to be turned into a CSS module, so that's fine. Cool, right. So that, hey, see, you learn something new every day. So we have a look at that. Right, so that is kind of the basic styling sorted. Let's add some logic to this dismiss icon. So when we click this dismiss icon, we kind of want an animation similar to this, like where it just goes away basically. So if we go to the dismiss class, we want to just add another class here. And what we can say, we'll add just clicked for now. And we'll say it's active. Really simple, really straightforward. And we shall say, obviously the opacity will be 0 because we've obviously said that we don't want it to be around anymore. We'll set the opacity by default to 1. And we'll say top is minus 100%. And we'll say top is, we'll leave what that is for now. In fact, we'll set top to 0 for now. Just we'll see what that looks like. So if we refresh that, yeah, that should be fine. Okay. And then what we'll say is we want a transition of, let's say, top to be about 0.4 seconds and opacity to be in 0.4 seconds as well. But we also need to add the active class to show that it is working. So if we go to, we'll close this down, we'll go to card. So where the icon is, we want to add some logic. So what we're going to do is we're just going to add a simple wrapper around the icon, and we're going to add a button. We're just going to add a normal button element. We're not going to add a button component that we've built because that's separate. That's got a different purpose. That's got a different set of styling and all kinds of things. We just want a normal button component where we can get the on-click event and use it to do something to the icon. What we're going to do is, using the on-click handler on the button, we're going to change a class name. So we're going to add on-click, and we're going to create an on-click function. We'll add that here. We'll just call it dismiss for now. And obviously we'll have an event. We'll just say synthetic event. And for now, what we'll do is we'll just say alert dismiss, just to show that it worked. And we'll set this to here. So we'll say dismiss, and we'll just say dismiss. Right, so let's go check that out. Refresh. Cool. Right, we'll just add a class name to this as well. Say dismiss button. We'll add this here. And we'll just say background none, border none. Let's go take a look. Go to the card component again, refresh. And now that button's gone. But if we click it, we still get the dismiss. Right, and we can also see it's tabbable as well. Let's go to here. Let's just make sure that this is tabbable. Add a tab index of 0. And what this means is if for keyboard accessibility, people who only use keyboards can easily tab to this, and also people who aren't using keyboards. So now if you refresh that and tab to it, you can see that we tab to it right away. So we've got some keyboard accessibility. Now we need to be able to do something a bit more with this. We want to be able to add a class name. So we want this to return something. So this is essentially a callback function now used on click for this button. So we're just going to say when this is clicked, we're just going to change some state. So the state is that the icon has been dismissed. So we'll go and add that state now. We can add that in here actually. So we'll say dismissed is dismissed. And we're going to use a React hook for this called useState. And within this, we're going to set the parameter to false, just to make sure that this is imported as well. Cool. And we're just going to say is dismissed equals if dismissed equals true, if I've spelled that correctly. Let's just move that one level out so we have access to it. So if dismissed equals true, then we are going to return the active class. If not, we just don't return anything. So let's go take a look now. Let's close this down. Go to the card. And if we click, we do actually need the inspector open. If we click the cross icon, we can see that we've added active. So let's refresh that, double check. So if we inspect, we can see that it's currently inactive. If we click the dismiss icon, we can see that it's active. Now that we have that, we can actually do something with it. We also want to make sure that this has got the default styling that we added beforehand. So let's just add template literals and add CSS dismissed and then also add another one with our logic. And we'll just space this out a bit so it's not so cluttered. We'll put this all on a new line. Cool. Right, so that's a bit more tidier. Right, let's go here. Dismiss. That's correct, I believe. No, that's not correct. That needs to be dismiss. Okay, now that all should be correct now. Go to card, refresh, click that. So if active is added, it should do that. So let's close that. Cool, so that animation works, but it only works on the icon, which isn't exactly what we want it to do. We want it to work on the container. So let's go back here and let's just take this logic off the icon, because we seem to have put that in the wrong place. We actually want that here. Actually incorrect. We want that on the card itself. And we will change the class name actually. So if we go here, and we'll put that as dismissed. Go back here, change that to that, and we'll go to card. Don't really need to do anything with that. Right, let's see what happens. Click that, and it's gone. We'll just need to make sure to add this top property here. Cool. Right, I think that's in a much better place. So if they dismiss something, it's gone. Right, so we've got the dismiss working. Now, accessibility wise, there's a lot you can do with it. You can make sure when you hover over it, it tells you what it is. You can add some ARIA labels for it for screen readers to say, oh yeah, this is the dismiss icon. But for now, obviously since you've seen the flow of how we do it on the button component, you should have the blueprint to go and figure all this stuff out now and add all the accessibility stuff that you need for all these little bits of for all these little components. And let's go finally sort out the button component here. So right now we don't have any interaction with this. We want to click it and we want it to be a loading animation. So let's quickly go to the card. Let's go to button. And what we want to say is we want it to be loading. So we'll say loading, and if we simply say it's true, it will just put a loading animation on, which is fine. But we actually want there to be some logic there to say when this actually does that. So if we go here and we just add another bit of state, we'll separate that so it's different. And what we'll say, button click, and we'll say is button clicked. And we'll use state again, and we'll make sure it's false by default, because obviously the natural state will be not clicked. And then we'll go down to here, and we'll say on click. Should be able to add it here like this. Oops. On click, we'll add a fat arrow function, and what we'll basically say is button clicked, and we'll say true. And then what we'll do is we'll just add the normal state, because this will be true or false based on this anyway. So if we go here, refresh, go to card. Obviously you can see the natural state is false, it's not loading, but if we click that, it's now loading. And if we want to dismiss this altogether, it goes. And there you go. So that is a simple compound component. We've taken the icon component, the button component, and we've created a new component around it that's completely reusable. Now you could go beyond this and add variations for color, for background colors, for adding images. The list is endless. With the card component, it can get really complex if you start adding all the possible options. But this is a really good starting point to kind of understand how you can bring certain elements together and make it a completely new component. So I hope that was useful. That's a bit of the thought process of going into it. In the next and final video in the series, we'll actually be finishing this UI kit and make it reshareable through NPM. We'll be turning this into an NPM module, so you'll be able to install it in the terminal and use it in any project that you want. So stay tuned for that. If you are new to the channel, make sure to like and subscribe. And as always, I've been Harry, and this has been Curious Byte.